most likely. Such simple wonders you teach your people to fear.
It is not from fear that they leave Sodom, but from faith.
Yes, she was a pillar of salt. She ran back to gather all the things that she bought. She can't seem to get rid of material things.
Brothers and sisters, this is Brother Rawchaa, and I'm filling in for Brother G.O.C.C tonight. He actually had a family situation come up that he's taking care of, so as of right now, I'm here to help with the show. You're listening to the international search engine on blogtalkradio.com for the Gathering of Christ Church, and have a interesting guest on tonight's show. We have Frank Joseph Hoff, and he actually is a researcher into the Atlantis. The Lost Continent Finally Found is one of his books. So as soon as we get him on, we're going to go ahead and bring him on so we can interview him. All right. Before we do that, as everybody knows, International Search Engine is every Wednesday night on Blog Talk Radio, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 Central, 2 p.m. Pacific Time. The website is www.blogtalkradio.com/GOC Church. Or you can call in. The guest calling number is 646-200-4309. If you have a question or comment, press the number 1. It'll put you in the calling queue, and we'll take your call during that segment. On Thursday nights, we have What Scripture Is That, hosted by brothers Rawchaa and GOCC. Showtime 5 Eastern, 4 Central, 2 p.m. Pacific Time. Friday night, we have Friday Night Sabbath coming out of Babylon, hosted by me, Brother Rawchaa, Brother Yawanathan. Showtime 5 Eastern, 4 Central, 2 p.m. Pacific Time. On Saturdays, we have Chilling with Israel, hosted by Brother G.O.C.C. That is at 5 Eastern, 4 Central, 2 Pacific Time. And then on Sundays, we have Hebrew Way is Life, hosted by Brother Xavier, 5 Eastern. That show actually, is 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 7 Pacific Time. The website for the church is www.gatheringofchrist.org. So if you want to follow the church, make sure you check out the website. If you have any questions, anything regarding church matters, make sure you email the church gathering as the number 1 at AOL.com. That's gathering as 1 at AOL.com. And we do have the guest in the studio, so we're going to go ahead and bring him on. Frank Joseph Hoff, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just fine.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing just fine.
That's good. Our original host, Brother G.O.C.C, wasn't able to be on for tonight's show, so I'll be filling in for his spot. And we do appreciate you coming on to the show. If you could just let the listeners know a little bit of information about you, maybe your bio.
Sure. Again, I didn't catch your name, sir.
My name is Rawchaa.
Rawchaa, okay. Rawchaa, again, my name is Frank Joseph Hoff, and I have been the researcher, understudy, and business agent for a Professor Aurelio Nunes dos Santos, Ph.D., I should say the late Professor Aurelio Santos, out of Brazil. He was not only just a nuclear physicist or nuclear engineer, but he was also a climatologist and a physical chemist and a geologist besides. He was at a major university down there called the Federal University of Minas Gerais in the city of Belo Horizonte in the state of Minas Gerais in Brazil. As far as my background goes, I'm a graduate here in the state of Washington from the University of Washington in Seattle. I was at the business school there a number of years ago is where I attended. I ended up running into Professor Santos because I was doing some pro bono research for a person you may know of by the name of Richard Hoagland of the Cydonia Mars fame. When I was doing that research, I came across Professor Santos' website, and I saw it as being a very interesting website, very logical, very well thought out, and very unusual as far as the information I've ever seen on Atlantis. And so I read through it all, and I also got in contact with Professor Santos through his son Bernardo, who is now part of our organization, which was named by Professor Santos, called Atlantis Publications, and I incorporated here in the state of Washington, Atlantis Publications, Inc., and I'm president of Atlantis Publications, and I'm carrying on the work of Professor Santos in both doing interviews like this and also seminars and conferences in person, as well as going to different places around the world in regards to Atlantis. I also have distributed our book as well through my company, Atlantis Publications, but also we have signed with North Atlantic Books and also Random House for their distribution of the book as well in a worldwide basis in English. We also have our book additionally in one other language as well, and I'll get into that later. And we'll probably start distributing to more languages as well. First of all, the name of our website and book is Atlantis, the Lost Continent Finally Found, and has a subtitle of it called The Definitive Localization of Plato's Lost Civilization. And our website, which I linked to your blog site, is at www.atlan.org. It's the first 5 letters. Atlantis is the .org website. Our book is listed on there, as well as Amazon.com. And also on our website, there's a lot of free articles people might be interested in as well. Over to you, Ramar.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So if you could just maybe give a brief synopsis of your book and just give our listeners maybe some insight on what they will find in the book Atlantis, the Lost Continent Finally Found.
Well, it's going to lay out the history of Atlantis from going back, really over 75,000 years ago. It will also pretty much give in some chronological detail and order about not only the history, but why everybody's been looking for Atlantis so long, and we've never found it. Our ending date for Atlantis, the advanced civilization itself, not the motherland, Lemurian Atlantis, is 11,600 years ago, 11,600 BP before present. As far as the motherland, Lemurian Atlantis, ending date on that is about 74 or so thousand years BP. So it will lay out information between the two different, those two different Atlantises, the Lemurian Atlantis, the motherland of civilization, and also its wondrous son, Atlantis proper. Also, we'll talk about the fatherland, which we have found out to be actually India, and also the respect to the actually what would be the 3 different types of Atlantis. Again, the motherland, Lemurian, wondrous son, which is Atlantis proper, and also the Indian one, which is along the Indus Valley area between Pakistan and India today. It also has in the book a lot of places where it points to evidence that Professor talks about, and we've done that by little book links, and they go from 001 to 187. but each book link not only just has one link to it, they generally it's 3 or 4, so there's over 400 book links pointing towards the evidence, and those book links, when you see them in the book, will correspond to our website right at the top where there's a thing that says book links on it. And if you go on that, you can see the numbers in order, so you can tap on those particular websites. You might go to NOAA website or NASA or a university or an ancient text, so people can check out the information when they see it themselves, because they might say, oh, this can't happen or can't be. Well, in some cases it can be, because NASA has done the experiments, let's say, on it, or come up with the information, and it's not just us, but it's them saying so, for instance, or maybe some universities done some research, or it might be some ancient text that Professor Santos is pointing to. Do you follow me?
Yes, I'm following you. I'm just listening to what you're running down as far as your book is concerned, and definitely a very interesting topic and concept. Me personally, I've done, I would say, over the past couple of years, a lot of research on Atlantis, because it's such a mystery. A lot of it, you hear of is maybe folklore or fantasy, what we're taught in school. A lot of people say, it's just a myth. Some people say, no, it really did exist. So there's a lot of controversy with the topic like Atlantis. What was it in the beginning? How long ago was it? Where did it go? These types of questions are the questions that people ask when it comes to Atlantis. Now, I heard you mention some names at the very beginning when you were giving your bio. So just based off of that, I think I've seen some of your interviews, or heard some of your interviews in the past. If I'm not mistaken, those people that you named are like maybe the forerunners in this research, or people that you're carrying on their research, and these were like the main people that were known for this Atlantis research. Is that correct?
Are you referring to Richard Hoagland? Is that who you're referring to?
Yes, just the names that you said that you mentioned at the beginning. You were carrying on their work. Okay.
Number one, Richard Hoagland I was doing some pro bono research for him, and it had to do with some things related to our planet, and also and Mars, and also dinosaurs, those type of things. So that was a totally separate thing. I ran by Professor Santos' work on his website at www.atlan.org when I was doing the work for Richard Hoagland. At that time, I contacted him via his son, or not too long afterwards, because I was looking to get him on a radio interview. Professor Santos is the one that wrote the book, Atlantis, the Lost Continent Finally Found, not myself, although I mentioned in it. So it's Professor Santos that really did 30 years of research in regards to this. Now, I worked with him for a while on this, but he originally went out to really disprove Atlantis because he saw so many researchers doing this that really were amateur and didn't have the necessary background or disciplines in order to do the work properly. So this is why he went out to, as a serious researcher, and especially with Atlantis, to do this, to do the research on this. Now, in science, a lot of times what you do is you go out to not only prove something, but also to disprove it. And so he went out to really disprove the whole notion of Atlantis, but he ended up after about 10 years finding out that it really did exist, and then another 10 years with additional evidence, and he found out it was actually more advanced than he could even imagine himself. So he turned around 180 degrees in what he was thinking originally. And then he had another 10 years of additional supporting evidence, a lot of along with me, to fill in any additional gaps, so he could fill in like a puzzle, not just a 1,000 or 2,000 piece puzzle, but something like a billion piece puzzles, to get a clear picture of it, where Atlantis truly was the original location, and what happened to it, and where any of the Atlanteans at that time were able to get away, and where they dispersed to. So, and that's like a diaspora. So he had to pick up a lot of background in order to do this. Again, I mentioned to you previously that he was a nuclear physicist, a nuclear engineer, a geologist, a climatologist, a physical chemist, but he also picked up other backgrounds in archaeology, in mythology, linguistics. He spoke 14 languages, including the language of the Atlanteans themselves. I can talk about that further, but he actually found out what they spoke. Ethnology, also etymology, and the origin and derivations of words, and then occultism. It's not that he wanted to be an occultist per se, but he had to find out the hidden meanings and symbols and things behind things in order to get a clear picture, an idea of what Atlantis was, where it's at. And not only that, but he actually reverse engineered it back to its true location, not just pick a point or spot and try to make the pieces fit like so many people have tried to do. It's kind of like trying to cram a piece in a puzzle. It's not exactly the perfect fit. Well, he ended up putting that puzzle together and make sure the right pieces were fitting in the right places in order to get this clear picture about the history, about the civilization, about the location, and what happened to everything.
Oh, okay. So you, if I recall, you said earlier that Atlantis was a civilization 75,000 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the ending date of a Lemurian Atlantis, the mother of civilization. It actually really probably went back more like hundreds of thousands of years, if not like millions of years as far as that goes. But the ending date was 74,000 on Lemurian Atlantis, the motherland of civilization, and the wondrous sun, or Atlantis proper, the advanced civilization, the ending date was 11,600 years ago, 11,600 BP. But even the advanced civilization, they were even more older than 11,600 BP. That's just the ending date when the cataclysm took place. And maybe that's where I should back up to and explain to you and your listeners exactly what happened to Atlantis and why we haven't found it all these years. Would that be good?
Yes, and just real quick before you do that, I had another question. Is, let's say if somebody, if you say, okay, it was here 75,000 years ago, maybe even hundreds to millions of years ago, how if somebody on the outside that doesn't know very much information on this particular topic, if they ask the question, how do you know, or how does someone know it existed that many thousands or millions of years ago? How would you determine that?
Well, this is a good question, and it has a lot to do with tracking of the evidence. There's many things that were put into Plato's two different dialogues, and that's where originally we heard of this information, or was written from, was Plato in his dialogues called the Critias and Timaeus dialogues, that he actually overheard from Solon, the great law maker or giver of Athens. And so it was Solon that was just that he overheard this from his speaking to a lot of contemporaries at the time. And so Plato took down this dialogue, and that's the ones called the Critias and Timaeus. However, Solon heard or learned of it from a vacation he was having in Egypt when he visited some Egyptian priests, and they told him about this advanced civilization. Now, a lot of people, that's where they end. That's as far back as they go, just to the Egyptian priests. But the Egyptians, we found out, learned of it from the Hindus, and the Hindus ended up learning it from the Atlanteans. So what I would suggest is probably maybe reading some of the free articles on our website, but also getting our book through Amazon.com or directly or on our website. Either way, it links to Amazon, or through my local bookstore because it's printed in English, or however we want to do it through the internet. And also reading the book, and going through maybe the second time you go through the book is to start checking out the information via the book links, the evidence. There's other evidence I'll mention too as we go on the interview here, through the interview, that will relate back to the site. But there's many things, in answer to your question, like, for instance, strategic metals, like, for instance, the different types of spices that Atlantis was famous for, the coconuts, the bananas, the mangoes, the golden apples. All these different things point back to this location where Professor Santos reverse engineered it back to. So there's a whole lot of things that the reason why it's at the location, which I'll bring up here shortly, versus some other place that's been usually been in and around either the Caribbean or in and around Spain or the Mediterranean or the Atlantic Ocean. So that's, I think, an answer to your question to start with.
Okay, yeah, and the final statements that you made there also were, kind of leading up to some other things that I want to talk about as well, as far as location and those particular places that it has been said that possibly were, it was or were advantaged to. Real quick, and correct me if I'm wrong, Atlantis means city of Atlas. Is that correct?
Yeah, it has to do with that. Actually, I could go through a lot more detail in regards to that. And what I'd like to do on that is I'd like to, first of all, lay out where the location is.
Sure.
And then also talk about what you're really referring to is what we found out is a highly encoded word by Plato, the word Atlantis itself. And it was actually encoded in 3 different languages. One was... and I'll get into those 3 because I don't want to mess anything up here. But it was encoded in 3 different languages, and he was actually able to decode that word Atlantis, and that helped him figure out where Atlantis is located.
Okay, sure.
All right. So what I'd like to go with is why we haven't found Atlantis all this time. And the reason is we've been all looking in the wrong location, and it's like looking in the wrong haystack for the needle. It's hard enough to find a needle in the haystack if you're looking in even the right one, let alone either the wrong haystack or the wrong haystacks. And that's what's been going on. What Professor Santos found out is that the Atlantic Ocean, as it's called today, is not the Atlantis Ocean as it was called 11,600 years ago. What happened is you had a couple of different explorers in discovery of the Pacific Ocean. In a sense, Vasco Balboa is the one that discovered the Pacific Ocean as we call it today. But what happened is there was a name change because it's Ferdinand Magellan. He saw it later down through the Straits of Magellan through Argentina and Chile way, and he saw it as a very passive and calm ocean. So he named it from the infinitive or Spanish or Portuguese word called Pacificar. And depending on how you use it in a sentence, it's either Pacifico or Pacifica. And so what happened is they dropped the O or the A, and that's why it's called Pacific today, and the name stuck. Do you follow me, Ramar?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens over time, and we're talking 11,600 years, names get changed. Another one that got changed was the Indian Ocean, it used to be called the Erythraean Sea. And before that, in either case, the Pacific Ocean was called the Oceans of the Atlanteans, as well as the Indian Ocean or the Erythraean Sea, was also the Oceans of the Atlanteans or the Atlantis Ocean rather than the Atlantic Ocean. But these names get changed throughout history, and it confuses things. You see, the oceans of the world are coterminous. That's a scientific name, coterminous. In other words, you can circumnavigate from one ocean to the other, let's say going around the tip of South America or the tip of Africa, and can lead in from one ocean to the next as far as that goes. So it was like the world encircling an ocean. But these names got changed, and they stuck, and this is what added all the confusion to things. And what he found out is that the Atlantis was located on the opposite side of the world. And so this is where the word Atlantis starts coming into play, because he found out is this. Several things to your question. Atlantis is named for Atlas, which is what you mentioned, which is from the Greek radix called tala. But in ancient Greek, you put an A in front of it, which becomes the Greek negative, and so it becomes instead of that becomes Atla, and so Atla, it means not to bear, where Tala means to bear. So, and what they're referring to is that one is unable to bear the weights of the skies. It's when the skies came down. And it's depicted a lot of times by Atlas holding a globe on his, but bent down on his serpentine legs. Now, that's where Atlas comes from, is from Atlantis, but it's from the Greek radix T-L-A, Tala, and that means to bear, and again, with the negative, the Greek negative in front of it, A, means not to bear. Not to bear the weights of the skies, or unable to bear the weights of the skies. And that's why, again, you see depicted is these, a lot of times, Atlas holding the world up on his shoulder, but bent down on his knees, serpentine legs. The rest of this goes, and is that the Greek name also is derived from the Sanskrit one, which is Atala. Atala. From Atala is the Hindu hell. And it's the site of the sunken paradise, and in Greek, Atala means not, or meaning also pillar, but it means absent of the pillar of heaven. So it's the pillar of heaven coming down, Atala, the Hindu hell, when the skies fill down. Again, this comes from Greek and also the Sanskrit as well. It gets a little confusing, but Tala also means earthland, or Atala also means no land, or sunken land. Additionally, the other language involved in here is the language of the Atlanteans called Dravida. Dravida is a language that was spoken throughout Southeast Asia 11,600 years ago and going further back. It is Dravidian, and it is it also highly encoded in the name is Ata'ala, and Ata'ala means footsoles, footsteps, or antipodus. It also means antipodal, which means antipodal means on the opposite side of the world, in the sunken land, the lagoon, the marshland, the island. And also, overall, when you put this all together, what it means is Atlantis is located on the opposite side of the world in the sunken mountain island marshland, which is where the location truly is, and that's between the Java Sea, the South China Sea, the Indian Ocean as we call it today, the Pacific Ocean as we call it today, and the area of Indonesia and the surrounding area. That's where the true location is Indonesia.
Okay, so that kind of goes with the front cover of the book where it has Indonesia. So that's where you're saying the original location of Atlantis was.
It's the original location of Lemurian Atlantis. Also, after it got destroyed, they rebuilt after 60,000+ years. They went up into the Indus Valley area, Pakistan, and India, which is more India at the time. It's India. It's Pakistan mostly today, but India, because the borders got changed over time. And they rebuilt over there. They went into some other areas of India, but they got chased out of there. There's some areas of India, like in Chennai, which is on the other side, which is on the southeast coast of India, where the Indus Valley is on the west coast of India. But in Chennai, they speak another language called Tamil, which is close to Dravida. Proto-Dravida was the original form. And so this is what they spoke throughout Southeast Asia. And Atlantis actually comprises also areas of Malaysia and even the far northeastern extension is like the Philippines. But mostly it's Indonesia, as far as the islands of Java and Sumatra and so on. And even on the Malay Peninsula, even Singapore. So there's a whole area there, goes up even to Thailand. It was a subcontinent of of Southeast Asia, and that continent was the size of what Plato described, which is of Asia Minor, which is Western Turkey, and Libya, which at that time was all of North Africa, not just area it is today, combined, which is really the size essentially of the United States with Alaska and Hawaii combined. It's a huge continent there, and 2/3 of it is underneath the sea today.
So two-thirds of you're saying of Atlantis is in the sea?
Yeah, underneath of it. Today, the Indonesian archipelago itself, just Indonesia, comprises over 10,500 islands just on Indonesia alone.
Right. Okay, so Indonesia was the original location, and you're saying that it's still the same location today. It hasn't changed over the, what you're saying with thousands and millions of years. Everything is still there. It's just now a lot of it's under the water. Yeah,
and that's another part I was going to lead up to here, too. I hope I didn't confuse too many people on the coding of Atlantis, but it is in 3 different languages, and it does point to be an antipodal for being on the opposite side of the world, in other words, from Europe. In other words, it extends all the way, we found out, to the farthest west, if you're looking from one side of the world on Europe, and it also extends to the farthest east, so it's where it's saying like east meets west, and it's where the Indian Ocean meets up with the Pacific Ocean, as you call these names today. Now, what destroyed the Lemurian Atlantis, the motherland, and where they had to rebuild over time, and they had to do a diaspora into the area of India or Pakistan and India in this valley civilization area, is the Toba volcano, which went off about 74,000 years ago. That is the one that destroyed the motherland of civilization, or the birthplace of civilization. By the way, it's not in Samaria or Mesopotamia or some other place. It was actually originally civilization was in Atlantis, Indonesia, where it began. After rebuilding 60,000 years, the Krakatoa volcano went off, and that's what ended up destroying the rest of the civilization, the advanced civilization. And what happened is because of that seismic activity, it caused a tsunami effect, like the one on December 26th of 2004 in Indonesia, up in the Aceh area. But this was 11,600 years ago, and it sent in the Great Deluge wave, which was not just 15 meters or 20 meters high or something like that, which occurred there, and also the one that was in Sendai, Japan. There was one just not too long ago there. But instead of just those 15 or 20 meter high waves, this one went up something close to 2,000 meters high. So it came in and took out not just like around 400,000 people in the Aceh earthquake tsunami, but in this case it took out essentially 20 million people in a day and a night. Now, it wasn't that Atlantis sunk, as a lot of people think. It was that sea levels rose, and they arose initially from the Krakatoa volcano tsunami, but then they receded. Now, what you see today, and this is answer to your question there, is that the sea levels rose on a universal flood because what happened is that it ended the Pleistocene ice age with the Krakatoa volcano, with all the fly ash going up into the atmosphere and stratosphere. It later came down on the glaciers all around the world, including in Europe and North America here, like across the United States or North America. We had a mile-high sheet of ice on our continent during the Pleistocene ice age. And so that water, what we found out, because the fly ash came down again on the glaciers and melted them because it had absorbed the sunlight rather than reflected it. And that's called the albedo effect. By the way, that's one of our book link numbers, number 012. They can check out, and you can see that I believe it was NASA is validating that that this albedo effect from soot or fly ash can indeed absorb versus reflect sunlight back out into outer space. So this way it melted the ice, became water, and it went down into the oceans. It had to come off the continents. So what happened is that ended up raising sea levels, not only just in the area of Indonesia and the surrounding area, but worldwide. It's just in that area it's very shallow, and it raised the sea levels up anywhere from 130 to 150 meters in that area. And that's why you just see the vestiges and tip-tops of Atlantis today. It happened over a period of like about 1,000 years, but that's the water all came off the continents and ended the Pleistocene Ice Age. But not only did they come off, but when they do come off, all that weight is unloaded from the continents and goes into the sea. So you got a lot of stresses and weak spots causing additional earthquakes and additional types of problems and seismic activity, not only on the continents but also in the sea level floor. So there was a lot of things that were going on, and this type of event was a cataclysmic event that also ended the lives of about 70% of the mammals on Earth, and that's why this all ties into the Great Deluge, the Great Floods, and all that sort of thing that you see in in the Holy Bible and just different ancient texts and so on.
Yes, and I'm glad you made that point because we are a church, and we do believe in the Bible, and there's a lot of information that we tie into that when going into a subject like this. Now real quick.
Well, I want to mention one other thing before you go
sure.
on. I meant to mention this earlier in the broadcast, but you had a couple of questions, so I wanted to address those. I usually try to preface the show by letting you know that Professor Santos or I, we are not in this, to put one religion against the other. We don't have any religious agenda. We don't have any political agenda or, any type of really economic agenda, any of those type of things. Most of the time our corporation has been losing money, as a matter of fact. So it's kind of a negative profit corporation. So we don't have any of these agendas in regards to religious favoritism, one way or the other, political favoritism. So I just wanted to make that point.
Sure.
Now, one other thing to that too is that the only agenda we have is to get the truth out, and mainly from a scientific standpoint. That's where we're at with this.
Okay, most definitely, and all we're about here is the truth, and we know that the truth will make us free. So we just want what is the real deal when it comes to whatever topic it is. So, but let me ask you. You said you don't have any type of religious agenda or anything like that. Do you have a religion?
Well, that's another thing. I don't want to really get into that because then it might say like I'm favoring mine or versus somebody else, or maybe one sect or part, of a religion. Because in many religions, there's all different types of divisions of those religions and so on. So I'm not trying to favor one over the other or point what I'm into or what I'm not into. So this has to do strictly from the historical and scientific standpoint. And, if it helps, with whatever you're doing, that's fine. If it doesn't, that's fine too. We're not trying to, take sides one way or the other, including even my own, let's say.
Well, one thing I can say about our radio show is that this is a raw truth radio show. So, nobody here within, our listenership is going to, take it one way or another as far as what religion you are. It's just to maybe get a feel for some of your perspective on certain aspects of life, maybe even this particular topic. But real quick, how long do we have you so that I can make sure we get enough time in for our callers that are wanting to talk to you?
No, I'm good to go. I understand we may have started the interview a little late into the broadcast because you were trying to get in touch with me.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to know how long we had you for. That way I can make sure that I get my questions in, and also the listeners that are calling in right now that have questions as well before we run out of time. Okay, so we were talking about religion. So let me ask you this question: do you believe in the Bible?
Well, these are some of the questions I don't want to get into too much. All I can say is this: is that there's many parts, not only just in the Bible, but in other holy books and ancient texts. It could be Hindu texts such as Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and other Vedic texts as well. So Professor Santos, when he did the work, he took a look at a lot of holy, different types of holy books and ancient texts and things like that, so he could really get a clear picture. It wasn't necessarily to favor one or whether you believe one or the other. It's just that he had to compile and cross-reference and cross-check, all these different types of texts and Bibles and religious readings and things like that to really, get a good understanding about Atlantis. And so that's what, he did. And so, I guess if you can take that from it, maybe some things in there might confirm different types of things that are in Bibles or holy texts and so on, because it plays into Atlantis. Atlantis was a rather spiritual type of society. It's where actually most religions and most sciences and most philosophies and things like that began. I think that might be good if I actually read this to you, myself and Professor Santos put together, what is the importance of Atlantis for mankind.
Okay.
Okay, here's the best take on this. Atlantis is the source of most all religion, most all science, and most all races and civilizations. It is the cradle or birthplace of world civilization, where civilization began. Its discovery now, at the very dawn of the millennium, has been predicted from deepest antiquity and is indeed the true message of the Gospels and other such holy books. The discovery of Atlantis brings back the hope of rebirth of the Golden Age with its promise of universal peace, harmony, love, and happiness for all mankind. It will also cause a major revolution in our view of the world, of both our past and our future, for it is a remembrance of our ancient ancestors from our ancient motherland and fatherland in honoring them. All this is to happen now as we enter the third millennium, the age of Aquarius.
Okay.
Now, with that, I want to mention one other thing in remembrance. There's a lot of different religions there that might be Christian religions or different Hindu religions and other religions throughout the world that do baptisms. You're quite familiar with that, I would take it.
Yes.
Well, Professor Santos, he found out where the baptisms came from and why, and that is the original baptisms came out of Atlantis. And the reason they did is because when the Krakatoa volcano went up, besides being burnt by the let's say the fly ash and the volcanic rocks and things like that, it also sent up the tsunami. And so it's highly symbolic of when the water went up over people's heads. That's why the baptisms is usually done by putting water over people's heads or putting their head under the water, because it's when the tsunami came up and drowned 20 million people in a day and a night that we lost the highest amount of, or highest percentage of people, the highest amount of people on the face of the earth in the shortest amount of time ever. And so that has to correspond and be symbolic and a remembrance of our ancient ancestors and remembering and respecting them. And also it corresponds to a religion or a holiday called like All Saints Day or All Souls Day, generally around November 1st. And the baptisms all go back to the flood or the deluge of Atlantis from the tsunami effect of the seismic activity that corresponds to the Krakatoa volcano.
So you're saying that according to your research, that the original baptisms was a tsunami that ended the lives of many, many people's lives.
Yeah, 20 million plus people in one day and a night. And again, it's not that Atlantis sunk. It was that sea levels rose. It's an optical illusion. If you're out in a vessel and you look out to see the whole continent or island of Atlantis, and by the way, it was a continent with its capital city being Atlantis, name Atlantis, or else the other name to it was called Poseidonus, looked like it sunk, but it didn't sink. It's all your perspective based on it's an optical illusion because the sea levels rose and it looked like the island or the continent was sinking.
Okay, well let me say this real quick. As far as making that analogy to a baptism, now that couldn't possibly be the baptisms that we read of according to the Bible, because in the Bible, baptism was the beginning of being reborn in a sense of becoming a new and better person. That, what you just described, was death, was like actual physical death, whereas the baptism was more spiritual and symbolic of death, but you arose a new person. So I can't draw the comparisons to that, saying that was original baptism compared to what we read of in the Bible. It's two totally different.
I got you. And I think I'll help you connect the dots on this. It all has to go back to why Atlantis was supposedly destroyed by the Krakatoa volcano. And that has to do with, at that time, either the god or gods were mad because of the original sin. And so this has to do with the original sin, or sins of Atlantis. And that's why what is said that the Krakatoa volcano went off and basically the lives of 20 million people got lost because of this original sin of Atlantis. And so that's why you have these baptisms also, I believe, to wash away sins, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Well, according to the Bible, yes, baptism was repentance and the washing of sins, making one clean or new.
That's all I'm going to really say about it, other than people should really read some of the free articles that are listed on our website and also into the book if they want to know more about that and the connection between the baptisms and the original sin and Atlantis and the Krakatoa volcano and people losing their lives, 20 million in a day and a night, and so on.
Okay. I'm going to ask a couple more questions here, and then we're going to go to the phone lines. I actually am going to bring in one of the elders of our church. I just want to get a couple more questions in, and then we'll go ahead and go to the lines. Unless there's anything after I finish that you want to, speak on before we do so. But in recent, last year, current events, we had an expedition team that went off the coast of Cuba, and they discovered large pyramids under the water and staking claim that this discovery could show the lost city of Atlantis being discovered in that area. What would you say to that research? Okay,
that goes back a ways, and it was actually a few years back when it was really mentioned. That has to do with a person by the name of Paulina Zelinsky, who is a Soviet-born Canadian oceanographer engineer. And she, at the time, it was from this advanced digital communications company, and she mentioned about seeing these pyramids. But the thing is that these pyramids are something like, I was calculating a while back, something like 760 meters or something below the sea floor, and so it doesn't quite make sense. And there's nothing really ever come of the whole thing. It kind of got dropped, and a while back I ran across some information saying that during the Cuban Missile Crisis, maybe they dropped some of the missile silos into the ocean, that sort of thing, and that might possibly be them. So I've never really heard much more out of it, and it's kind of a dead issue whether we're able to get in there via the Cuban government, whether it's in their waters or it's in international waters or very close to the border of that. So the way I look at it, as far as any Cuban location or Caribbean location, is that at best they may just be an outpost or a remnant of Atlantis, but not the true original location as Indonesia is.
Okay, so maybe possibly what you're saying is, from your understanding, a remnant, but not the true Atlantis. That
area, or maybe Bimini, which is in the in the Caribbean. Most of those areas, at best, if they're anything at all, would be some type of an outpost or of Atlantis colony, because they were a worldwide empire and they had different colonies and outposts around the world. But it's not the true original location, the actual homeland of Atlantis. And by the way, with that question, I should also mention that when they dispersed from the Krakatoa volcano, some people made it out of there. And what they did is they went northward and westward into India, because they're familiar with that anyhow, and then went into Persia, which is like Iran, and also into the Samaria area of Iraq and Mesopotamia, all that area there, and into Egypt. So they went northward and westward, eventually into Europe and so on. So that was one way they dispersed. The other way they went, it was because they're ocean-faring people. They were known as the sea people, and they knew very well, the different parts of the world. They went into they went into Peru and also into Ecuador or South America and Central America, because they couldn't go into upper parts of, let's say, North America, because the Pleistocene Ice Age was still ending. And so that's another reason why Atlantis is where it is on the equator, and where it has to be there, because it's in the middle of the Pleistocene Ice Age. It had to have a temperate climate. And anything that's above 30 degrees north latitude or below 30 degrees south latitude at that time could not support a population of over 20 million people. And this is some of the logical things I was reading originally in Professor Santos' website, as you have to be logical about this and not just put Atlantis in some place where, like Antarctica, where the ice core samples have been taken in situ, showing that the snow and ice has been there for close to 2 million years. It's hard to support a population of, let's say, 1,000 people in Antarctica, let alone a place that's 20 million people, to have 20 million people there. But in Atlantis, Indonesia, you can support 20 million people because you have a temperate climate, and you also have another thing which came from the volcanoes, which is volcanically rich soil. And the other thing you also have is the precipitation, all the things that are needed. And that's why in the day of Atlantis, they were actually able to grow as many as 3 crops a year, and one of those main staple crops was rice. And so Atlantis, one of the biggest inventions of all time, was agriculture and also animal domestication. And so that allowed them to be more fixated to land rather than be hunter-gatherers. And so the civilization developed there. Again, not in Mesopotamia, Samaria, or Iraq, or anything like that. So those are all secondary places, but the original location is Atlantis, Indonesia.
Okay. Let me ask you the next question then. Are you familiar with the book by Sir Francis Bacon called The New Atlantis, where Sir Francis Bacon goes into the philosophies and theories of Plato by way of Solon, by way of the Egyptian sages that were given this information to the Greeks of this continent being out past where we call the Atlantic Ocean today, and Sir Francis Bacon saying that America is the lost continent of Atlantis. It's actually the new Atlantis.
Okay, I gotcha.
From their concepts. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I understand. Well, some ways he's right, and in some ways he's wrong. So it's just as far as learning it from Solon, the great lawmakers of Athens, he learned it from them, and they learned it from he learned it from the Egyptian priests. But we went further again they learned it from the Hindus, and the Hindus learned it from the Atlanteans. So as far as being in the Atlantic Ocean or anything like that, no, it's not the case at all, because they don't understand that the continent, look at, about Columbus. He went out to find or looking for the East Indies, if you remember this from school days. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
But what happened is that what happens is we all learned that he ran into the Americas, but he was looking again for the East Indies, and by the way, not the West Indies like the Caribbean. And so they came into the Americas, not just like North America, but Central America and South America, the Americas. And what happened is that's where we were left. And I think if you were in school at that time and you said, well, whatever happened to, looking for the East Indies, they probably would have told you to sit down and shut up, because that was the ending. That's where it ended. It just dead-ended right at the Americas, and we never heard much about him trying to look for the East Indies. What we found out is that he was looking for the East Indies because he was looking for the riches of Atlantis, or he was looking for the Atlantis because he had these great maps, which are actually more valuable, like in gold and silver, or just as valuable, for the kings and queens of Europe. But he ran into the Americas because he didn't take the dialogues of the Critias and Timaeus dialogues seriously about the outer continent, our outer continents, which would be the Americas. But Atlantis was known to be in the Atlantis was known to be in the Orientale and not in the Occidentale, it was known to be in the Orient and not in the Occident. So this is why it was located to the furthest west if you look at one side of Europe, and also to the furthest east if you're looking for the other side. By the way, another name that got misappropriated was our Native Americans here in the United States or in North America, because we call them Indians. And the reason is because they were looking for the East Indies. But I also found out, too, that it wasn't too long after that they ended up discovering that they did not reach the East Indies, and that they didn't give the name appropriately to the Native Americans here, but the name stuck. And it's even stuck today, although many cases we're changing that name to Native Americans versus Indians. But still in all, it's more appropriate to be over in the East Indies, like, let's say, India or Indonesia. By the way, the word Indonesia stands for Isles or Islands of India. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I was not aware as far as that particular breakdown of that name, no.
Yeah, by the way, Indonesia was also colonized by the Netherlands and is the Dutch East Indies, known as that. But a lot of this, and this is why I'm doing this, carrying on Professor Santos' work, and why he was doing it, is that there's been a lot of misinformation out there, and we're trying to straighten it out the best we can. Unfortunately, I don't have, it's a late Professor Santos. He passed away on September 9th of 2005. So I'm carrying on his work, and I was working with him for a while on doing this and bringing out his book, but within 2 months of the time he released it on Amazon.com, within 2 months he passed away, which is, I think, a great loss to the world. And by the way, he told me many times that this was his gift to the world, because Atlantis was the spirit of the world, or the soul of the world, and the island of Bali is known as the navel of the world.
You said the navel of the world?
Navel, like a person's belly button in their stomach, like the navel, rather than like Navy.
Okay. What I want to do is, because we have some callers in the queue, I want to bring them in because they have questions, and I also want to bring in. We have the elders of our church that are listening, and they wanting to have the opportunity to speak as well. So again, this is Frank Joseph Hoff. He's the guest speaker. His book is Atlantis, the Lost Continent Finally Found. And we go ahead and bring in Elder Rawchaa. Shalom. Are you there, Elder?
Shalom, brother. How are you?
Hello. How are you doing?
Okay, I'm doing well. Nice show tonight. I'm sorry I had to come in late, but just have a few questions, and then I guess we can take a few questions from the audience. How are you, sir?
I'm doing just fine. How are you? I imagine you are. Where are you located?
Well, my original location was Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but right now I'm traveling abroad. Right now I'm overseas here.
Okay. Are you like in Europe or Asia?
Yeah, Europe. Yeah.
Okay, great.
How are you?
Doing just fine.
Okay. I was following your work. The brother Azariah sent me information on your research and your predecessor's research. Real quick, I just wanted to just ask you a few questions because we like to tie things in with the Bible. Have you made an attempt to tie in your findings with the Bible?
Well, there's some things that do tie in with the Bible or different types of ancient texts or Vedic texts. You know, I mentioned I hope I get his name right here. Is it Ramar?
Brother
yes.
Ramar. Yes.
Brother Ramar. Okay. That Professor Santos and I we're not in this to side with any particular religion or put one religious group, even within one religious group, against the other, or any social agenda or political agenda or anything like that. So we're not really into any of that kind of thing. Now there may be some ties with things that are mentioned in different holy scriptures, holy books, and things that may tie in with this. But I'm not trying to favor, or was Professor Santos trying to favor one group or one religion over the other. We have a lot of different religions throughout the world, and some even have different branches or segments in there, like might be conservative or orthodox or reform or I don't know, all these different types of branches and so on. And so I, on occasion, will have somebody want me to favor their religion over some other one, and I'm just not into doing that. Now, what I can say is that there's a lot of tie-ins between this. What we want to do here, or at least what we're doing, is we're doing this research and investigation and work, and it's seminal work of Professor Rawchaa Santos, mainly from a scientific standpoint. That's where we're at, in a historical standpoint. Now, if it happens to fit with your religion or whoever's religion I'm talking to or out there, then great. If it doesn't, that's just the way it falls. We're not trying to have one religion over the other on any of this kind of thing. And so, if it works, it works. Now, I can tell you certain things sometimes that we come across, but I'm not looking to favor one religion over the other. If you follow me.
Okay. Well, let's do this because we're not looking to favor one religion over the other. Matter of fact, we didn't invite you in to the discussion, or we were intrigued with the research. We didn't invite you in to favor a religion.
Okay.
But I was just asking you in particular, biblical, the Bible from a historical standpoint. Just if you're looking at it from a scientific view, you understand? Mm-hmm. What I'm asking you, have you seen any similarities within the Bible that would relate to some of your findings? In particular, just from a historical view.
Well, yeah, and I mentioned this earlier. I don't know if you caught it, but the great floods have a lot to do with it. The great deluge or the great floods or the universal flood, that all ties in with the catastrophic events of Atlantis, of the catastrophe and the catastrophism. So they're definitely with that. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and that's mentioned in our book, and also on our website under the free articles. So I can tell you that there's a clearer thing. Now, there may be parts of this whole thing where science meets religion or religion meets science, vice versa. Or maybe science might be able to confirm some religious things overall, universally. This information was dispersed pretty much universally, and a lot of different religious texts, wherever they may be, are basically picking up on the same thing. Like, let's say the universal floods. And so, how can that happen? So many different religions, so many different places on Earth, without it tying back to, the original information, because it's coming from all different sources. So there's, whatever it is, there's definitely something to it. That I can tell you.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because the point of my question, and I know you've been on for a while, and I know that we're near the end of the show here, but the point of my question is, this information that you've researched have been in the earth for thousands of years. Not only yourself, but your predecessor have came to the same conclusions, that something of biblical, if not what you would call phenomenal proportions, was found by many generations, and for years, to some degree, was hidden. Once this discussion happened in the earth, some would claim that it was probably, to some degree, a myth, when there was archaeological finds to prove it was not a myth.
Well,
I'm going to ask you a question
here's one thing about that word myth. Myth today actually means something like mostly false or false. And the meaning has got changed over time. And what it used to mean was mostly true. And so, and a legend was really considered quite very true. So these the meanings of things, as well as the names of things, get changed over time. Just as I mentioned, the Pacific Ocean earlier got changed. The Erythraean Sea name got changed from it, the oceans of the Atlanteans. That's why a lot of people think if it's Atlantis, they got to be searching in the Atlantic Ocean. But it's not the Atlantic Ocean as it's called today. It's Atlantis Ocean as it's called 11,000 plus years ago, 11,600 plus years ago.
I'm trying to get to a point, not to just focus on the word myth. The point that I'm trying to get to, or the question I have, is why have mainstream science and mainstream historians, why have they ignored this key finding and its tie to recent civilization? From your vantage, from your studies, why is it, if all these things have been found, they've been known for years, that this land, the land of the giants, the land that fell, the land that was judged, pre-flood, wouldn't it be in the benefit of society to know why this happened to this particular great society?
All right, I think I can fill in some of this here for you.
Let me say what I'm saying, and I'm going to yield so I can hear your answer. Why is it that society? Some would say that this was the navel of all civilization. That these were some of the, matter of fact, some of the greatest minds on earth during that time. Why were they destroyed? What is their attachment to modern day society, and why is society hiding its existence? Because the powers of this earth know of Atlantis. A matter of fact, a lot of them, some pagans, worship the deities of Atlantis. So why is it that mainstream have ignored its existence on a just from an everyday standpoint? Shouldn't civilization know why these people why this civilization was judged. If you could quantify all that information, if you know where I'm going here.
Okay. I think I can pretty much. Go through this with you. First of all, a lot of things have to do with knowledge filtration. The other thing has to do with that the scientists were originally very interested in this about Atlantis. And what's happened is that because so many people and misconstrued things or didn't have the scientific background to do the work properly, it became some type of a taboo subject. But they were originally interested in this. And this is from Professor Santos, let me know about this. But the other part goes with the initiates, the original initiates, and a lot of those have to do with even the what we've called the Phoenicians and some other groups wanted to keep the area secret and also from being desecrated and pillaged and plundered because of the great riches of Atlantis, like the gold and silver, these type of things, copper, zinc, tin, so on, some to make strategic weapons. So originally they tried to protect it because of it was it's actually the holiest land on the face of the earth, not in the Middle East. It's the original Holy Land. So you might be surprised to hear about that. Also, one other thing that ties into that, what Professor Santos found, that the Garden of Eden, or Garden of Aden, depending on which way you want to spell it or say it, was the garden of the Lemurian Atlantis, the motherland. He found out that the Garden of Eden was the garden of Lemurian Atlantis. So it's things like that. But originally it was to protect the area from our ancient ancestors and honoring them, but also the gold and the silver and the riches of Atlantis from people pillaging and plundering or desecrating the area, because this is a very holy and sacred place, and it's also a remembrance of our ancient ancestors from ancient antiquity, and honoring them by not desecrating this area. So that's what it started with, and then the other part had to do with the knowledge filtration, and then also because of disinformation, and also from people not, let's say the profane, not understanding this too well, that a lot of misinformation got out there, and then also the name changes with the Pacific Ocean and the Erythraean Sea, or the Indian Ocean it's called today, and so on. A lot of these things, even got misappropriated, the names that tied it in correctly, and also even the name for the Native American Indians here in the United States called Indians versus something else. And so this all confused things and misconstrued things, and so all this misinformation made a big misunderstanding of where Atlantis was, what the society was all about, and a lot of their and that was an advanced society, and it ended and ended in a very violent, destructive way from the Krakatoa volcano. But also to tie in with that and with your question is that Professor Santos also found out, and he will well know about this because he's a nuclear scientist and a nuclear engineer, that not only did the Krakatoa volcano went off, but there was also a war of Atlantis between the Ariel Semites, the Aryans, Semites, they split in two different groups, and the Dravidas. And so the sons of lights and the sons of darkness. And what happened is one side wanted to get up on the other side, they had an all-out nuclear war with tactical nuclear weapons, but also somebody decided to drop a nuclear weapon down in and around the Krakatoa volcano, and to get one up on the other side, but it went off a lot more than they possibly expected, and was something like 1 million atom bombs, like the one that went off over Hiroshima, and it almost made an extinction of the whole planet here, or the people on Earth, and extinguished approximately 70% of the mammal species on our planet. So these are the things that tie into all that in regards to your question of why maybe some of this information hasn't come out, and that's why we're going to bring it out now. After 11,600 years, I think it's time to start coming out, and that's why I'm doing this.
Okay, well, what I wanted to tie in that can probably help you out with your research, and, because I understand the scientific point of this particular research and its findings, but society have purposely, even before yourself have researched this information has been out for thousands of years, but the world have been disconnected from this information for a particular point, and that's what I'm trying to bring forth here. The fact that society who worship these deities have hid these deities knowing that this place was judged for their evil against mankind. Now, this one point, and I want to get your opinion on something here. And if mankind knew of this evil, and why these people or why these beings were judged, why this city was judged.
Okay. Here's what I want to say. I want to say one thing in regards to that one. I'm thinking of it.
I'm saying because I only have a limit of time. That's why we let you go on for hours. There's a point that I wanted to make.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting to your point here too on this, and what I can say on that is that the founder of Atlantis was Poseidon, and Poseidon had sons that had different kingdoms, and what happened over time is that he had certain laws and rules, as well as his sons, for people to live by, and unfortunately, over time, people got away from being held responsible and accountable for their actions. And because of all this breakdown of the society, it led to a lot of these things. And so that is what I can say about that part of it that I know of. And so everything was working fine, and when people were following the laws and the rules and the laws and everything else that were laid out. But they tended to get away from them. People weren't held accountable. People weren't for their actions. And so it was kind of a breakdown of the society, and also it was a war of Atlantis. So these things started taking place. He didn't want it going this way. His sons didn't want it going that way, but things just started getting out of control. Besides, they only lived so long themselves, and somebody else took over, and changes got made from what the original founder of Atlantis was wanting to for people to live by, and so on. So that's what I have to say about that.
Okay. Let me tie it in for you. Okay. Here it is in the book of Enoch. In the book of Enoch, it speaks of what you're talking. This is history before the flood. All right. In a nutshell, society has hid the knowledge of them because these are the gods that the Greeks, the Romans, the satanic powers that rule the earth worship. It's a religion. It's a religion in itself. A matter of fact, these people, like Poseidon, is an ancient god of the Greeks and Romans. Let me read something real quick, and this is for the listeners so that they can get a tie-in to know that this was a purpose hide. This is not just a new finding. This is a hide so that if people understood what was really going on, they would believe and understand the truth concerning the Bible. Let me read this real quick for those that are out there in the book of Enoch to show you how this all ties in flawlessly to biblical history. I'm in the 15th part of the book of Enoch, and I'm going to show you how this flawlessly ties in. When Enoch was taken into the heavens, after the fallen angels have made a petition to the Most High about their sons who was on the earth. And in the book of Enoch, the Most High God said what would happen to this land and these people. Let me read it. As a matter of fact, this is ancient text, translated out of the Qumran caves of pre-flood history. Listen to what it says real quick. If you haven't read it already, I still want to emphasize something here to show people that this is nothing religious. It's history. And he answered and said to me, and I heard his voice, "Fear not, Enoch, thou righteous man and scribe of righteousness. Approach hither and hear my voice. And go say to the watchers," according to scriptures, were the fallen angels whose job was to watch the earth and intercede to man for the Most High, God. And go, say to the watchers of heaven, who have sent thee to intercede for them. You should intercede for men and not men for you. Whether have you left the high and holy and eternal heaven, lain with women, and defiled yourselves with the daughters of men, and taken to yourselves wives, and done like the children of earth, and begotten giants or sons. And though you were holy, spiritual, living the eternal life, you have defiled yourselves with the blood of women, and have begotten children with the blood of flesh. And as the children of men have lusted after flesh and blood, as those do who die and perish. Therefore have I given them wives also, that they might impregnate them, and beget children by them, that thus nothing might be wanted to them on earth. But you were formerly spiritual, living the eternal life and immortal for all generations of the world. And therefore I have not appointed wives for you. As for the spiritual ones of the heaven, in heaven is their dwelling. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. And on earth shall their dwelling be. Evil spirits is their beginning and primal origin, and they shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction, and cause offenses. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men, against the women, because they have proceeded from them. From the days of the slaughter and destruction and death of the giants, from the souls of whose flesh the spirits, having gone forth, shall destroy without incurring judgment. Thus shall they destroy until the day of the consummation, the great judgment in which the age shall be consummated. Over the watchers and the godless, yea, shall be wholly consummated. And now as the watchers who have sent thee to intercede for them, who had been aforetime in heaven, they were angels, say to them, you have been in heaven, and for the mysteries had not yet been revealed to you. And ye knew worthless ones, and these in the hardness of your hearts you have made known to the women. And through these mysteries, women and men work much evil on earth. Say to them, therefore, you have no peace. And they took and brought me to a place in which there were flaming fire. And when they wished and appeared as men, and they brought me to the place of darkness, and to a mountain, the point of whose summit reached to heaven. When you go on and on and on, and I wanted to go directly into the judgment of these particular beings before the flood, because there was a purpose why Atlantis fell. The purpose, according to biblical text, not just the Bible, this is not a religious thing, this is history. According to other alternative biblical information that's pre-flood, these beings were part angel, part people, and they were being worshipped in the earth as gods. So the Most High God judged their fathers for bringing forth a hybrid being and teaching mankind evil, things they should not have learned. Therefore, a war broke out, which is in ancient history called the War of the Titans. And that's why you speak of these things like nuclear weaponry, traces of nuclear weaponry, things of that nature. There's nothing new under the sun. This is the same technology that was before the flood by the children of the fallen angels who taught man evil that led to destruction. So the point of emphasis, what I'm trying to say here is there is a spiritual tie that we should acknowledge what happened in Atlantis, not in reverence, but to know that the God that judged them is not done judging. The fact that place is a landmark of ruin speaks to mankind that at any time the Most High God can destroy the most powerful of man without hand. And that's the point that's being lost in all these scientific finds. And I'm saying this not to disrespect your particular historical finding. As a matter of fact, we respect your historical finding because, on the other hand, it actually validates the truth concerning Scripture. It doesn't go against Scripture. But what I'm saying is we shouldn't reverence this as some holy, righteous situation. It's not. These beings who lived in this land were evil. They were wicked. They taught mankind things that they should not have learned, and they did things they should not have done. They're the children of the fallen angels, and it's the land of the giants. And not only that, it was really rhetorical, or the question I was asking you was from a different standpoint, because we knew why society had hid the knowledge of these beings. Because your top scientists, who were sorcerers in past days, as well as the what you would call the royal families of this earth and those that rule this earth, worship these beings. They worship the giants. That's why they had Stonehenge and all these different archaeological findings. They actually worship the fallen angels. That's why they hide. The Roman Catholic Church worships them. So we can separate the Bible and the historical findings from the evil of Atlantis. You understand? And we have more historical finds from a biblical standpoint. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes or ills that happens within this earth is that when people see the Bible and they see the book of Enoch and other information that can actually give you detailed understanding of why these things happened, they ignore it because they believe that it's from a religious angle, that it's about a belief thing. It's not a belief. And what I wanted to show you is that when you read the book of Enoch, it talks about the clash of the Titans. It talks about the land of the giants. It gives you geographical location of where these beings were judged, also where their fathers are buried, like under the Great Pyramid Dudiel, which is Azazel. It talks about Poseidon. It talks about all the things you're speaking of, but they can't tell society because if society understood, they would repent and come back to the Lord who judged Atlantis. You understand? And that's the point. This is the ungodly world. The scientists are ungodly because why? They just deal with findings and not tie it into the Creator, to the Maker. And they reverence things they find opposed to reverencing the God that destroyed them. So when we look at the ruins, we see something different. We see a fulfillment of Scripture, knowing that at any time the Most High God will send a judge according to the same text that told us of these giants, that told us of these lands. So we tie it in, not to say, oh, Atlantis existed. Of course it existed. That's not a finding. That's nothing new. But what we need to find out is, okay, if it existed and it's all this great power, why is it they haven't told society? It's not about riches and somebody would find it because they have the military and the powerful might to stop anyone from getting it. It was because these are the gods. They got the knowledge of how to oppose God from these particular findings. It's a lot of things they have found in Atlantis that they can't tell mankind because mankind would actually go against authority. They will stand against authority and fight against the gods that were behind the fall of man. When you see Atlantis, brother, you should see the fall of man. That's what you're supposed to be seeing there. You're supposed to be understanding, like, who's the God that did this? How can I get on the right side of this God and not fall like those who fell in Atlantis? You understand? So the point I'm making is we've been studying Atlantis, and I'm sorry I came on later because I had some key information, but I couldn't come on because we had a scenario. But what I'm telling you, brother, is we need to talk because your findings really, of course, you know there's nothing new. We just want you to discuss these, but you cannot ignore the biblical significance of your findings. You need to tell the world that that's what's about to happen. So not only it didn't only happen to Atlantis. According to biblical text, it's going to happen. It's going to happen all over the earth. A matter of fact, Babylon, the place that most people reside in, what happened to Atlantis will happen to America. And if you don't go into Atlantis and figure out what happened and why it happened, you will be doomed to repeat it. You will actually.
Okay, it looks like the elder dropped there.
And his name again is?
Elder Rawchaa.
Rawchaa.
Yes.
Okay.
And so he dropped. So we're just waiting for him to call back in. So just based off the information that he was bringing forth while we wait for him to come back in, I mean, is there anything that you know, wanted to respond back to as far as that's concerned? We'll go ahead and let you do that now.
Yeah. Originally, Atlantis was a fair and just society and everything, and people paid attention to the laws of Poseidon. I agree that they got away from his original laws and teachings and were evil, became evil, and that part is what happened over some period of time. Again, eventually his sons took over, but then the grandchildren took over, and then the children of the grandchildren took over. So things got, they got away from the original laws and teachings of Poseidon, and so it was a collapse of the society. That part I agree with. So as far as tying in something.
Hello?
Yeah, Elder's back.
Okay. I'm sorry. Something happened here because I'm overseas. Let me say this, sir. Poseidon was evil. Poseidon. So when you say get away from the knowledge of Poseidon, Poseidon was judged and his children. He was evil. So it wasn't getting away from the teachings of Poseidon, sir. And that's how the Bibles tell you that turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as the potter's clay.
All right, looks like he dropped again.
Okay, I don't necessarily agree with that particular view with regards to Poseidon himself or his sons. It's the ones afterwards that I and Professor Santos would tend to go with. So, are we just about at the end of the show, or whereabouts are we?
Well, the show still has 2 more hours left. So, how much more time did you have available to give to us tonight?
Well, I've got to get going pretty soon, but I can give a few more minutes or so, and then I've got to run because my understanding it wasn't going to be much more than an hour and a half, something like that, or maybe 2 hours at the most. And so I've got to go. Is what I
sure I understand. Well, what I do is wait for the elder to come back in, but we do have some callers here in the queue as well. So
I can take another call as far as that goes. I think your Elder Rawchaa made his point. I understand. What I would suggest, if he has anything, is just to send me an email, which is listed on our website. Again, I'm looking at this from a historical and scientific standpoint, and not from just a religious standpoint. So I want to make that very clear. And I am trying to get this information out to the world as is Professor Santos' gift to the world, as I previously mentioned.
Can you give the listeners again one more time your website and your information?
Okay, first of all, our website is at www.atlan.org. It's the first 5 letters of Atlantis. It's a .org or .org website, not a .com. Our book is written by Professor Aurelio Nunes dos Santos, or Professor Aurelio Santos of Brazil. He is was a professor of nuclear physics, nuclear engineering, geology, and physical chemistry. And the book is entitled Atlantis, the Lost Continent, Finally Found, with the subtitle of The Definitive Localization of Plato's Lost Civilization.
Okay, most definitely. And you said that the email contact is on the website as well, right?
My email is on the website. So you can, if somebody wants to write me, they can write me from there. But again, I'm not going to be getting into religious conversations, only historical and scientific ones.
Okay, well, we have the elder back online. Elder Rawchaa, are you there?
Yes. See, the whole point, and we're gonna let the next caller in, is that this is what was. Let me tell you, this conversation between science against so-called religion was one of the walls they have placed before mankind so Atlantis couldn't be discussed, because it's an impending battle against good and evil, and it's as if science, which is something fairly new in this earth when you look at it from how they're viewing it, because it became a religion in itself. They tend to make people believe that science is not a religion itself, which it is. If you're saying that people have gotten away from the teachings of Plato, or the teachings of, let me correct that, Poseidon, sir, or the understanding of Poseidon, that means Poseidon was teaching a way of life that can be viewed as a religion in the earth. And that would make others, and when science teach certain things, it's to reverence the same evil deities that fell before the flood. So let's not bring this into a religious, say that this is a religious debate and we're not going to speak religion. Speaking of Poseidon itself is a religion. Poseidon was an evil god that was judged, that will be judged eventually according to a lot of historical records for his evil and their attachment. And let me make this clear. We by no means, we're not saying that they didn't bring great technology to society. We actually agree with their existence. But you and I, sir, at this moment, is on the other side of the story. You're on one side of the story, and we're on the other. We're not giving reverence to Poseidon. We understood that our God judged Atlantis for the evils they taught mankind. And a matter of fact, your findings prove that true. That something was going on there that led to its destruction. And what we're saying is, open yourself up to research the information, not from a religious standpoint, but from a historical standpoint, and you'll actually understand your findings. It'll actually give you more to research, but not strictly from an archaeological find, okay, but from a more spiritual find. But before you go, I'm going to yield, and I'm going to let the callers call in. I want to say this real quick. In the Bible, it says about science. O Timothy, keep that which is commended. 1 Timothy 6:20. To thy trust, avoiding profane and vain babblings and opposition of science falsely so called. And he said science falsely so called because science itself, believe it or not, is a religion. And it was created to downplay the Creator. Because if you understand the Creator who made everything, there's no need to run around trying to figure out what happened. You know what happened because you're getting information directly from the source. Okay? So I want to put that out there for you. We bless you for coming on, but we wanted to bring you on so that others can hear that, yes, the scriptures are true and you have found information to actually back its findings. Thank you. Okay? All right, so we're going to take calls, and I'll just lay back, and I just wanted to be able to tie those things in for the brothers and sisters so they can see that even science, who are still trying to research their findings, even scientists who are still looking, still digging into things, actually validate the scriptures, and that the scriptures are true, and that most people, everyone, need to find out who the true God is, the God that destroyed Atlantis. That's where the discovery should be. All right? All right, bless you.
All right. Okay, so Mr. Hobson, we're going to go to the phone lines. We have a lot of callers here. Hopefully we can get some in before you go. Let me go to the first caller. We have Brother Lexwell. You have a question and comment?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. Hey, how you doing, Ramar?
Hey, I'm good. How's it going?
Pretty good. Hey, Mr. Frank Hoff, how you doing? Mr. Hoff, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm gonna have to go pretty soon because I'm getting phone calls in, and so I can't be too much longer.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I was just asking how you're doing. I wanted to ask you a few questions. You brought up earlier the motherland and the fatherland. If it's not being rude, I want to know if I could ask if you were German.
No, I'm not.
Okay. You had mentioned the age of Atlantis, that being the golden age, and you had kind of said it in a statement as you were awaiting the golden age. Am I right about that?
Atlantis was a golden age at the time of Atlantis. Yes.
And from your comments earlier, you were kind of saying you were awaiting the golden age, right?
That I was what?
Awaiting the golden age.
Yeah.
The new Atlantis.
Yeah, I mentioned in something I was reading. It's a rebirth of the golden age. We're coming back to that.
Do you feel that's
in the future?
Is that exciting to you?
Well, I think it's a rising of Atlantis again. Hopefully, I might play a part in that in making people aware of where the true location was versus some of these other locations where it wasn't.
Well, in the time of Atlantis, when you look at history around the world, there's a lot of claims that giants existed in the time of Atlantis. Any thoughts on that?
Well, they have found that in the Flores Islands of Indonesia that they have found the giant skeletal remains of skeletons that may go out something close to 4 meters in height. So,
what does that
mean? These are like the giants of Atlantis, and also the so-called hobbits or dwarfs also have been found on the Flores Islands as well. Now, this is, of course, more like archaeology and anthropology and so on, but they mentioned that some of these giants are there. The other thing we found, too, is that when I was there, and over in the Bandung Museum, they have the giant elephants that Atlantis was famous for. They're big like the mastodon or the woolly mammoth, bigger than the African or Asian elephants. Now, I know you probably don't want me to talk about that part. You got some other idea in mind here, but I'm just going by the evidence that's there. And they do have one in the Bandung Museum that is more like an elephant type, the stegodons, versus some type of woolly mammoth or elephant like the African one, much larger. And Atlantis was famous for these giant elephants they use in wars and battles. So that is what I can tell you about.
All right. Well, another question. You had mentioned earlier that your research led to the discovery of the language that the people of Atlantis had spoke. Can you go further into that?
Well, that language was Dravida, and part of my Atlantis team over in Singapore speaks a very similar Dravidian language called Tamil. and that's a very close derivative to Proto-Dravi, the original language of the Atlanteans. It's similar to a Sanskrit-type language. You might also be interested, it was known as the language of the birds. From my understanding, too, with Professor Santos, is that the Atlanteans even had the ability to communicate with animals as well. But they did speak this Tamil, Dravi, the language that Professor Santos could actually speak. It's not spoken probably too much or hardly at all, and if it was, or is today, probably in around the Indus Valley area of Pakistan and India, and perhaps maybe even in Chennai, where which is southeast India in this case, where Tamil is spoken. So that's the things that we've found out, and that's kind of what I can tell you about that.
Very interesting how you mentioned their talent of speaking with animals. That kind of rings a bell when you think of the modern-day Aquaman, because a lot of the conversation that you've talked about has to deal with Poseidon. And I noticed when I look at the character Aquaman, he also carries a three-pronged trident. And this also leads back to, where you don't want to go, the Bible, where it talks about Dagon. So I was wondering if we could take another route. And, I know there's other callers, so this will just be my last question. You had stated most religions come from Atlantis. Now, when you make that statement, that also reminds me of the Catholic Church and seeing that their mitre around their head, or their mitre, seems to be the head of a fish. Can you elaborate on that at all? And
no, I really can't, and really don't want to get into that. I'm just saying that, from my understanding with Professor Santos, is that most all religions and most sciences and most all the races and civilizations originated out of that area. That's where I can tell you. They also, as far as the races, may have migrated back and forth between Africa and where the civilization began, Indonesia, or Atlantis, Indonesia, depending on the climates at the time. Sometimes in Africa it was more of a polar desert at times, so they may have to get out of there. And sometimes it was better at times, so they're okay. All I know is this, is that the Atlantis was located on the equator, which goes now through Sumatra. What you might find very interesting is that the meridian or the longitude did not always go through Greenwich, England, at Greenwich Mean Time at the Greenwich Observatory, which is east of London. But actually, originally, it used to be at 0 degrees latitude, which it still is, and 0 degrees longitude, where it used to be. But it's not. But a lot of people think it's always been in Greenwich, England. Well, it wasn't in Greenwich, England.
So that's prior to the flood.
Before that, it was in Paris, France, and before that, it was in Canary Islands because they thought Canary Islands was Atlantis. But it's not. The original time was the original part, and this has to do with the cross of Atlantis, showing this and depicting this. It was at 0 degrees latitude and 0 degrees longitude, which goes right over Sumatra even today. And because they had to be in a temperate climate with precipitation, and in this case, volcanically active soil. And the area of Indonesia, by the way, is that's the most volcanically active area in the world. Even today, they have 129 active volcanoes. So that's what I can say in regards to that.
Well, what kind of event would change the prime meridian?
They changed the prime meridian to Greenwich, England, because at one time England used to have the most powerful navy in the world. They're also imperial-type power, and they wanted it to be where the day started, at the time started, was in England. And it's not directly in London because the Greenwich Observatory is actually in Greenwich, England. And that's where Universal Coordinated Time, or Greenwich Mean Time, is at today. But it wasn't there because what happened is that it was in Atlantis, Indonesia, because that's where the day started and the day ended. It's a land, not Japan, but it was really the original land of the rising sun and also the land of the setting sun. It's also depicted in the back of our book about that, on our original book, that's on our website, showing the sun coming up from the ocean as it was rising. but also set behind the mountains. The mountains are mountainous area of Atlantis. So even today, the international date line is not too far from that area. But it wasn't really till Japan with their sun on the background of the white flag being the land of the rising sun, although that may have been a far extension of Atlantis. But it was really Atlantis, Indonesia, was the land of the rising sun, but not only the land of the rising sun, it was the land of the setting sun as well.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hoff. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks for calling in, Lex.
Thanks again, man. Exciting show. Shalom.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm waiting to go into the queue.
Okay. I can take one more call, and then I've got to go.
Okay. I think the host was cut off. I'm the caller that was just in talking to you.
Oh, this Lex?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Brother Azariah, if you can hear me, can you bring in the next?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Azariah,
Okay.
I'll just take one more call. I've got to run, okay?
Okay, yes, we have, let's bring back the Rawchaa. Hold on one second.
Yes,
Rawchaa,
I'm
you
here.
with me?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Hello?
Floor.
Yes.
Yes, I'm here. Hello?
Yes, this is Frank
You can
Joseph Hoff. You have a question?
Yes, just one question. Just to speak of Poseidon real quick before you go. Wasn't Poseidon a deity worship in ancient Rome and Greece? Can you give some detail of what that tie-in is with the Poseidon you speak of in Atlantis?
Well, the Greeks come up with many different types of gods and names and things of that nature, as they do with Atlas and Hercules and so on, and Zeus and a host of other ones. All I know is Poseidon was the founder of Atlantis, and that the capital city of Atlantis was named Atlantis as well as the continent, but also the other name for the capital city was all the canals where the great ships came into, was named also Poseidonus, after the founder of Atlantis called Poseidon.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, there's one more thing I'm going to add to this, too. You might be of interest to you and as well as the rest of the listeners. The Pillars of Hercules is normally considered on the Gibraltar Strait between Morocco and Spain. Those are a decoy or a copy or more of a archetype of the original Pillars of Hercules. The original ones were actually between the island of Bali and the island of Lombok. Now, those pillars on Bali were called Mount Agun, and they go up about 3,000 or so meters even today. And also the other one on the island of Lombok is called Mount Rinjani. Those were the original Pillars of Hercules as the great ships came into the capital city of Atlantis, or Poseidonus, with the great canals and hydraulics and everything, and they could take in the great ships into port. When the Krakatoa volcano went off, it opened up the Sunda Strait between what is now called Sumatra and Java. At one time, it used to be all Java before the Krakatoa volcano blew it apart, not in 1883, but 11,600 years ago. Krakatoa, the word also means to saw, or saw in half. And it used to be known as also Upper Java and Lower Java, but is one time just Java. After the Sunda Strait was opened up, the Pillars of Hercules were flanked by the Krakatoa volcano, or the remains of it, and Mount Dempel. But the original gateway to paradise that they had to cross through from like what is Indian Ocean today and the Pacific Ocean that's called today was through the Lombok Strait down along the Wallace Line into the capital city. I hope that also helps to fill in a couple of things for you, too. I just thought I would add that.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
If it's okay, I'd like to mention our book one more time on our website. And if people want to know more, they can they can read the book or also see some of the free articles that are rather lengthy on our website and get a much more detailed information about our project on Atlantis and Professor Santos' seminal work. And if they're okay, I can mention those again.
Yes. Well, we do thank you for coming in, and I'm glad everyone was able to hear your archaeological find and the research of your predecessor. We thank you for being a guest this evening.
Yeah. Can I mention my book, the book again, and the website?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Our website is at www.atlan.org. It's the first 5 letters of Atlantis. It's a .org website. The name of the book is Atlantis, the Lost Continent Finally Found, with the subtitle, The Definitive Localization of Plato's Lost Civilization. It's by Professor Aurelio Santos. And one other last thing I wanted to mention is that just recently, in about 20 kilometers south of Gunung Padang, there's a pyramid there, Gunung Padang Pyramid, just about 20 kilometers south of Cianjur in West Java, Indonesia. An Indonesian presidential task force, along with some other people, have discovered and now dated an ancient pyramid called Gunung Padang. And that pyramid was dated in 2 different laboratories in 2 different countries, one in Jakarta, Indonesia, the other one in Miami, Florida, in the USA. And the dating is coming out somewhere close to 14,000 BP, or 14,000 years before present, which will make it not only the oldest pyramid, probably, or structure in the world, but also, at least purported, but also even larger than the pyramid at the Giza Plateau at the Khufu Pyramid, that is. So I just thought I'd mention some of that potential evidence coming up in the future that's happening. And they're also putting that in now, or putting the papers in to UNESCO, United Nations Scientific Organization, for a World Heritage Site at Gunung Padang.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. Some great findings.
Thank you very much for having me on, and appreciate the time, and also the listeners, the callers, with their questions.
All right, bless you. You have a pleasant evening, all right?
All right, bye-bye. Thank you.
All right. Okay, how you doing, Brother Rawchaa?
Rawchaa, he dropped.
He dropped. Okay, yeah. I apologize. Brother Rawchaa could not be on tonight. He's dealing with an emergency. But one point that I wanted to bring forth, and I think Lex was touching on some of the things with some of the questions he had. But I wanted to show people, and it's not this guy's fault. We just brought him on for his findings with Atlantis. But I want to show people out there, the brothers and sisters, how society have reversed what you would call information authority. You notice how they have dumbed down the what they would call the religions of the world, or the belief in a God, to make it sound like as if that's a myth, if that's something that's that it's below science. It's like they degrade the understanding of the Bible. And on the other hand, they uphold the religious teachings of the Greek gods and the fallen angels and the deities and demons that are judged by our God. This is how they've done it. They have first placed religion into a corner. They've put religion into this corner that you cannot say anything because you believe in a guy or something out in space that can't be proven by scientists. This is how they've done this, and they've acclimated this through time. Who's behind this? The Greeks and Romans. Before our modern time, everyone knew why Atlantis was judged. Everyone understood it was a god, the eventual God of the Hebrews that was behind the fall of all these gods before the flood. They used Socrates. They used Plato. They use all these Greek philosophers' information and uphold them, even in the corporate world, so that the world will believe or have a greater compassion towards the fallen deities opposed to the Creator itself. And I know this show wasn't supposed to go this way, but there's no way people or intellects like our past guests who have researched a plethora of information throughout the earth, there's no way they can understand all this and not know who the true God is, or the fact that there's something spiritual that the world is not speaking of. They know. You cannot do all this research and not hear about the God that judged it. And that's why I read out of the book of Enoch. A lot of these so-called historians have read the record and ignore it, or they keep it to themselves and don't tell the population. Why? It ties in the Bible and the history before the flood. That's the only way to explain Atlantis. And a matter of fact, what I'm going to do this coming Sabbath, if it be the Most High's will, we're going to go into Atlantis from a biblical standpoint, from a scriptural and historical standpoint, to show everyone what the scientists, what the historians have blatantly ignored, and its purpose. If we know the truth of Atlantis, I think that would be the tie-in for all the teachers, all the so-called religious leaders, those that believe in the Bible, those that are in the Christian church, Christian pastors. And why do I say that this would be a key find for them? This is something that they can use to validate the truth concerning the Bible and show a judgment to come similar to a judgment before the flood. Now you have archaeological finds to prove that your God is the real God. And if people don't come back to him, if the world continues to ignore him, then this world and this society will suffer the same fate as Atlantis. So they have dumbed down religion so that our religious leaders don't have that key point of emphasis to uphold and to teach our record, which is the Bible. On the other hand, you have all these different books and all these different guys who've created these books are being upheld as modern-day prophets because they found ruins, the ruins from fallen angels. And they're making all this money off of fallen angels and Atlantis, but ignoring the God who destroyed Atlantis. So I wanted to put that out there that I'm going to touch on this. I know I'm supposed to be going into something else this coming Sabbath, but I'm going to touch on this coming Sabbath, at least 30 minutes to show people why the world ignore Atlantis, because they want to spin it as something good. It's nothing good about Atlantis. It fell because it was evil. Okay? All right. So how long we have here? About another 30 minutes before it goes into overtime, right?
Yeah, I'm back. Keep getting dropped. Okay. Yeah, so we got 30 minutes before overtime. So we have callers. We got, I think Truman is supposed to be the next guest. So,
well, what we're going to have to do, because we only got 30 minutes, we probably have to pull in Mr. Truman early next week.
Well, we still have overtime.
Okay. All right, because overtime, it's a limited calls that'll be on, right?
Right. Whoever's in going into overtime will be there.
Okay. Well, whichever way you want to go, because I know we only got 30 minutes left, and I know a lot of people want to speak to the guests and what happened tonight. So it's up to you.
Okay. Well, we'll take a couple calls, and then we'll bring Dr. Truman in. Let's see. The next caller in the queue we have is Ayash. Ayash, you have a question?
Well, I had a question, but he went off the air already, so I just wanted to make some comments concerning, going off of things he said, just things that I noticed. I just want to go through some precepts, if that's all right.
Yeah, let's get it.
All right, I want to start at Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. It says, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." And that's exactly what's happening, because for a while people were not aware of Atlantis. It was just a myth, but, knowledge is increasing about certain things, and people like Dr. whatever his name was, they're getting the what. They're figuring out, they're trying to learn history, they're figuring out what went on in the past, but the problem with just learning the what, but he hasn't learned the why. Why did the Great Flood happen? Why was there a global deluge? And that's the danger of just looking at things only from a scientific point of view, because he doesn't understand why this global flood happened. And the danger of not wanting to get into a religious aspect, he'll never get it. You know what I'm saying? And the reason, it happened is because, all flesh corrupted its ways. And Romans chapter 1, verse 17, Romans chapter 1, verse 19 says, "Because that which may be known of Ahia is manifest in them, for Ahia has showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. All of us are without excuse. But that when they knew Ahia, they glorified him not as power. Neither were they thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish hearts were darkened." Now, how are the hearts darkened? Well, we have to figure that out. And what was that? The Wisdom of Solomon. I want to go there real quick. Hold on. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14. It says, hold on. "Again, one preparing herself to sail and about to pass through the raging waves calls upon a piece of wood more rotten than the vessel that carrieth him. For verily desire of gain divides that, and the workman built it by his skill. But thy providence, O Father, governed it, for thou hast made a way in the sea and a safe path in the waves, showing that thou canst save us from all danger, yea, though a man went to the sea. Nevertheless, thou wouldest not that the works of thy wisdom should be idle, and therefore do men commit their lives to a small piece of wood, and passing through the rough sea in a weak vessel are saved, or in the old time also, when the proud giants perished, the hope of all the world, governed by thy hand, escaped in the weak vessel, and left to all the ages of generations." So now this is going back into when we were talking about the flood. Why Atlantis was destroyed. Well, it started because of idolatry. It says, "For the ungodly," verse 8, "But that which is made with the hands is cursed, as well it as he that made it, because he made it, and it being corruptible, it was called Ahia," or the power. And this is the part that he's not getting into, because he's not understanding, why the flood happened, why there are no more giants, why everything is only a myth and a legend. You know what I'm saying? And in Romans chapter 1, it says the wrath of Ahia is revealed from heaven, and that's exactly what the flood was. It was the wrath of Ahia that was literally rained upon the earth. You know what I'm saying? And that's just really all I want to speak to, Like in The Matrix, I don't like quoting movies too much, but in The Matrix, the Merovingian in that film said it's not so much the what as it is the why that gives you true power. If we can all learn as much as we want to about history and hidden history and things like that, but if we don't understand the why certain things happen as they happen, then, we're all doomed. You know what I'm saying? Because, hold on. And this is just the main point. So I want to bring up Acts 17 and 30. It says, "In the times of this ignorance, a higher wind sat, but now commandeth all men everywhere to repent." And as long as people are not wanting to get into a religious standpoint or just want to look at science, history, and just look at the what but not the why, then we're all going to remain in the crosshairs of Yeshua when he returns. You know what I'm saying? Because we're not going to be looking to repent. We're just going to be continually learning and learning and learning, but not, really coming to understand what we need to understand. Like in Proverbs 4:7, it says, "Get wisdom with all that getting, get understanding." Okay, well, we can learn out of history, want to learn, but if we don't understand why things happen in history like that happen, you know what I'm saying, if we don't get the understanding, then we're all doomed. So that's all I wanted to say tonight.
And, that's definitely a good point because you listen to him and what he was saying is, he wants to exalt the city of Atlantis as being this great place, the golden age, Poseidon. He was this great god, and, the people of the land started going against his law. So, yeah, he's going back into the same thing that brought about the destruction and judgment during the time before the flood. And so a lot of times you try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but they have an agenda, and those, when you ask them a question, do you have a religion, do you believe in the Bible, and they try to run away from it, maybe those are the gods that he does worship, and it's a reason why he's trying to, sugarcoat it and make them look like they're so great guys, because those are actually the people who he does worship. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility, and it is sad because there's so many people, they're learning. I see a lot of minds getting freed from the program that's set up for us from the time we're born, but they're not really coming to what they truly need to understand. They can't break through that second veil. You know what I'm saying? There's a physical veil, a mental veil, but then there has to be a spiritual veil, which you have to break through, and, a lot of people are being kept from that. And the majority of people who break through the mental veil, only very few of them will break through the spiritual veil, And just a request, I don't know if Elder Rawchaa is still listening. I just want to say shalom, and I know you said you're going to do a lesson on Atlantis this upcoming Sabbath, and I just wanted to know if he had any information on Edgar Casey, because I learned about him years ago. He, professed himself to be, a Christian, or whatever, but he had prophecies concerning Atlantis that seemed to start to come true in the 60s with the discovery of the Bimini Road in the Bahamas or out in the Atlantic Ocean, things of that sort. And he also mentioned part of the United States being flooded, things like that. So I didn't know if Elder Rawchaa had information on Edgar Casey, if he'd like to bring any of that out. That's all I wanted to say. So, hey, bless you, bless y'all, and thank y'all for giving me time to come on the show.
All right, well, bless you too, and shalom.
Hey, shalom.
All right, and Yash, if you could press 1 to exit the call queue. We'll go to, we'll take one more call, and then we're going to bring in Dr. Burst. We have Kamar with a question.
Shalom. Basically, how you doing, Elder Rawchaa? Shalom.
Brother. How are you?
Yes, I'm great. I was just listening to the brother, and I found it to be quite interesting some of the things he was saying. But I did notice, as Omar was saying, how highly he spoke of Atlantis and how great of a city it was, and I'm thinking to myself, well, if this place was so great, how come is it still underwater? And I'm thinking, well, he said because they fell from the ways of Poseidon, and Poseidon kids took over or whatever the case may be. But I'm thinking, okay, well, let's look at this. We know that it was a flood according to the scriptures, but when the flood went away, we know that some parts of the earth, came back up from the flood. So it had to be something about Atlantis that wasn't quite right, that the Father said, well, this place is going to stay underwater. And another thing I noticed is when it comes to talking about the Bible and the scriptures, instead of them just admitting that they really don't quite understand the book and they need help understanding the book, they'll rather just try to debunk the book and prove that the book is wrong. But another thing that he said that kind of went left to me was he had made a statement to Rawchaa where, you know, that's how come you see all the things happening in the earth today that's written in the Bible and some of the spiritual books or whatever. And then Rawchaa tried to talk about the Bible with him. He was like, well, you know, I kind of don't want to get into all that. You know, my focus is really not to do that and things of that nature. But I'm like, okay, so if that's not your focus, why would you even mention the Bible? So that's just a few things that I noticed that he said, and then he just started really double talking because he's like Poseidon, but I always thought in mythology when it deal with the belief of many gods, I always thought that according to them, Zeus was the main god over all of the gods. So it's kind of confusing. So I was just, you know, just listening to him really just talk himself into a hole, all in all. But that's all I wanted to say.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
Okay.
Shalom.
Well,
all right,
Shalom. I think the brother made some key observations. And going back to the point of him saying that people went away from the ways of Zeus, or those before the flood started walking contrary to the ways not of Zeus but of Poseidon. That means, see, the underlying statement he's making without saying it is that people on this earth need to walk according to the ways of Poseidon. So, and like the brother said, it's a double talk. And see, that's how Satan operates within science. He'll have you question a foundation while leading you to following him. And see, that's the key. Without him even doing it, he would convince the unlearned. Well, normally he would convince the unlearned, those who didn't know any better, to ignore the Bible and to begin to find out, well, what are the ways of Poseidon? What are the ways of Poseidon? If Atlantis fell because of Poseidon and people didn't follow his ways, I need to research what those ways were. Obviously, those ways were good for mankind, which leads us to an alternative religion. It's the same religion of the Greeks and Romans. He spoke of Plato. He spoke of Greek philosophers, when we have nothing to do with their philosophy or their gods. As a matter of fact, the Bible tells us that we are to shun philosophy and vain deceit. Colossians 2:8. That the Most High warned us from philosophers. So what I'm showing, brothers and sisters, that science, it's not really science at all. It's a religion. It's a religion. And it more so leads you to find information that would have you reverence the fallen gods. That's what it's all about. There's science in everything. Leads to you reverencing their God. Because instead of saying, here's our view from the other side. Instead of saying that mankind fell from the teachings of Poseidon, why not say that mankind fell from the principles that you read in the Bible? That the God of old time, the God before the flood, mankind walked away from that God, not Poseidon. Why would he uphold Poseidon over the Creator? See, these are the things that one with a watchful eye would actually examine and say, you know what? He claimed he's not dealing with religion, but he's leading me into trying to find out what Poseidon was teaching, which is religion. It's Greek religion. So they'll get you on the Roman Catholic side with paganism, which they integrated with Christ's teaching, and they'll get you on the scientific side too. But both paths lead to Satan. Okay, Rawchaa, you got it.
Yeah, when he, basically the whole time he was coming with contradiction after contradiction, especially when he brought up the Bible, and then, okay, let's go into the Bible. No, I don't want to talk about it, like Brother Kamar said. But I knew once he brought up Poseidon, that was the knockout. That was the uppercut right there. bring up Poseidon and then try to exalt Poseidon as this great guy. You know, he dug himself a hole he couldn't get out of at that point. So, of course, we know at that point they have to go, and then we go to the next host, or the next guest. But we're going to play a quick ad and a song, and then when we come back, we're going to go to Dr. Truman Burst and bring him on. We have about 17 minutes left before overtime, so if you're listening through the computer, if you can call in, it looks like the queue is full, but if you can make it in, the guest calling number is 646-200-4309. Just simply press the number 1 if you have a question or comment, and we'll try to get to your calls for Dr. Truman Burst. This is the Gathering of Christ Church International search engine, and we'll be right back.
You have.
In the beginning, while Adam slept, the Most Higher pulled a rib from within him and created another soul, whom Adam called Eve, and she was to be his helpmeet.
I'm part him and he's part me.
Sometimes we agree to disagree.
Our union is so sweet.
The Most High made her especially for me. She's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
And she's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
And she's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
And she's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
Y.A.I.L. A virtuous woman, she performs so well. I'm her Isaac and she's my Rachel. Shame-faced when she walks, no mincing. Keeps the eyes to the curve and I ain't even pimping. Phenom in the kitchen, not to mention she keeps my bones fat while I do the dishes. She keeps my bones fat with her discretion. How I love my dame, calling me I don't want for more than just my name. In the dark, she made my world so bright. Responsible for bringing forth the other one nice. Yes, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. We are one for better or worse. I bear the seed and she's my earth, fertilizing some kings and some queens.
I'm part him and he's part me.
Sometimes we agree to disagree.
Our union is so sweet.
The Most High made her especially for me. She's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
And she's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
And she's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
And she's my helpmeet.
Yes, I'm his helpmeet.
What beautiful thing. She's a love drug and I'm an unrepentant fiend. We are tween, oops, I mean twine. On the scale of 1 to 10, she's a 99. Songs are out of one in every line in this rhyme. This poetry is right on time. I call it game, y'all call it caking. Y'all call it strange, well, y'all just hating. I'm blessed with her vibrations. Body massage while I'm sipping libation. Helps me in my escaping persecutions and wicked allegations. I'm the man of the house with no dictation. Hard keeping the house, but she shows patience. Beautiful spirit and demeanor so gracious. Got a will kept home, now here comes Satan.
Surely he didn't say you will die. He knows that if you eat of this fruit, you will be like the Most High, knowing both good and evil. And their eyes were open.
You are listening to an international G.O.C.C. Blog Talk Radio Show. You are listening to an international G.O.C.C. Blog Talk Radio Show. You are listening to an international G.O.C.C. Blog Talk Radio Show.
All right, shalom, brothers and sisters. We are back, and we're going to go ahead and get to our second guest tonight. Go ahead and bring him in. Dr. Truman Burst. Shalom, are you there?
Shalom, I am here. Is this Brother Ramar?
Yes, it's Brother Ramar. How you doing, sir?
I am blessed, and I know that you are blessed as well.
Yes, sir.
I lift all of my answers today, up to the Most High, to be guided by the Holy Spirit, for the glory and for the victory of Ahaya, in the name of Yahshua. Thank you, praise you, and worship you. In Jesus Christ's name, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Amen.
Amen, most definitely. All right, so we got you on the show, and did you have anything that you wanted to talk about, or did you just want to go straight to the lines and answer questions?
We will go to the lines, but I do have some things I need to share with people that are emergency alerts that are coming out of the CDC, and that the CDC is ordering all the healthcare centers to contain a superbug before it jumps to the general community. So that's very serious. And what's really serious, Brother Ramar, is even more serious, is the fact within 3 days I got another alert of another bacteria that's killing people. So we've got a real major problem with bacteria that are no longer treatable by antibiotics and that are killing people, and these bacteria are becoming more and more proficient in killing us faster. For instance, this new superbug, it comes from the Centers of Disease Control, the CDC, and it's raising the alarm on a new drug-resistant superbug that scientists they call it carbapenem resistant Enterobacteriaceae, or CRE for short, and yes, it needs to have a short name, CRE. It's a superbug, and this new superbug is a newish family of antibiotic-resistant bacteria. It's not completely new to the U.S. because the first known case was discovered in 2001. But since then, it's spread at such a rate, it's now on the CDC's most wanted list. Because here's what they're saying. They're saying that our strongest antibiotics don't work, and patients are left with potentially untreatable infections, says CDC Director Dom Frieden. The medical establishment issues an alert that resembles our previous warnings. And please understand, Brother Ramar, I've been warning people about this one for over 50 years. It's coming at us. The bacteria is getting stronger. It's overcoming the antibiotics, and it's happening to the point where what the CDC is doing now, they're alerting medical centers like hospitals and nursing homes and clinics and surgical centers and rehabilitation facilities and long-term acute care facilities to look out for CRE cases and stop it from spreading even more, especially outside of healthcare centers and into the general community, where that's where it's heading. And for the past decade, the CRE cases have mostly slipped under the public radar and the public health officials' attention, and that's led to the present problem. We don't have enough data, according to them. That's what they're saying. They don't have enough data to tell what the trend looks like, says a Pennsylvania Department of Health Director, Epidemiology, Stephen Ostroff. So this is a serious situation, and here's what's going on. What we need to do is we need to avoid healthcare centers like emergency rooms or acute and long-term care facilities. These are places where CRE and CRE-infected persons show up the most, especially in large cities like Los Angeles and New York. we need to disinfect surfaces. These include doorknobs, countertops, and surfaces in the bathroom and kitchen. Nothing better to disinfect and nothing less expensive than colloidal silver water to do that. And consider using an air purifier for the home. And these can trap or kill airborne spores and bacteria and viruses and pollen and dust. And then you're not breathing this, and these can give you an edge in staying generally healthy and keeping your immune system strong. So, but here's the key. What do you do when these bacteria are sucking all this, these air purifiers are sucking in and removing all this out of the air? Pretty soon the outside of the unit becomes infected. What do? Is you spray it down with colloidal silver water, and that kills everything, all the ingoing air into the air purifier, and that is one of the greatest little tricks about colloidal silver water, again, that is killing these bacteria, funguses, viruses that are not controllable by conventional methods and pharmaceuticals. And you need to consider wearing a medical face mask for exposed situations that you can't avoid. If you're going to go to the hospital or a care center and go to these places where contagion is rampant, then you really should wear a mask. And before you go in there, you might want to spray that mask on the outside and the inside with colloidal silver water, and then go in. And then after you come back out again, and I would spray it again with colloidal silver water, and then you're totally, there's no way you can get contaminated. Now, the other thing is strengthen the good bacteria in your digestive system. Take a special antibacterial acidophilus. And you don't just want any one. You want one that is made with potato starch, a bacterial culture, and has magnesium stearate. That's okay, and contains no milk, no yeast or milk products, no corn, no soy, no egg preservatives. You want a powder. It's less expensive when you're getting an acidophilus. The acidophilus powder, and the best one on the market, is one that is made on vitamin C and apple pectin and rice bran and carrot, and it's free of everything, preservatives, coloring additives, gluten, and fillers, and that is the best powder. That's one I've been taking for about 30 years, and it's number 2030 when you go to the website that has this particular powder. It's called betterhealthherbs.com, Better Health Herbs, and when you get to the search engine at betterhealthherbs.com, you type in 2030. And oh, by the way, if you want that colloidal silver water generator that makes thousands and thousands of gallons of colloidal silver water to where it costs you pennies instead of, a quart of colloidal silver water, Brother Ramar, is for 32 ounces, it's about $50. You can buy a colloidal silver water generator that I invented 35 years ago, makes all the colloidal silver water that you want to. It's number 4576, number 4576. This is a generator that makes colloidal silver water, and it'll make it for the rest of your life. It never breaks. The little silver rods wear out, but it comes with them, and the batteries wear out eventually, but it comes with them. It's all put together. It's ready to go right out of the box for $79.95. See, now that is the lowest priced colloidal silver generator that has the longest history of use, 35 years, and people love it, and it's portable. It's about the size of a deck of cards, carry it with you anywhere. It sterilizes the water. First thing it does, if you went to a place like Mexico, where the water is notoriously filled with bacteria, you take that water, you put these silver rods down into that glass of water, and in about 3 or 4 minutes, that water is safe to drink because it kills all the bacteria and starts loading it up with colloidal silver in submicroscopic particles that carry an electrical charge, and it's in suspension, and it's in this water, and when you drink that water, it's like medicine water. It's the state-of-the-art natural antibiotic that was the most popular antibiotic in the 1900s until drugs came along. But it got displaced with drugs. But now it's back, and now that little box, make all that you want, thousands of gallons, and believe me, there are people going to be around you. They're going to have colds, flus, viruses, and pneumonia and bronchitis, and you're going to hand them some of this water, and they're going to drink one glass, a whole glass of it, 12 ounces of this water, one glass every day, well, for one glass 3 times a day. For 3 days, no more pneumonia. That's powerful. And it's safe because afterwards, all you have to do is make sure you're taking that acidophilus to make sure you're having a lot of friendly bacteria. And if we got a serious case here, if we have a cold flu virus, and they're going around like crazy, and that's the other thing. Let's give you one more. Because there's one other thing you could take. It's an anti-plague herbal formula that was invented by a Dr. Christopher back in the 60s. Yes. I'm hearing a little feedback back the mic.
Okay, hold on one second. I think just real quick, Dr. Burst, before you go into that, because you spoke about, you said you've been, saying this about 50 years now, and it's funny. It's something because the scriptures have been telling us for a long time what times we're living in. When you read Luke 21 and Matthew 24, when it talks about plagues and pestilences, so it just gives more confirmation of the times that we're living in, as far as with the other things we see, like the earthquakes and the wars and the rumors of wars. Just wanted to throw that in there, but go ahead with that information you're about to bring out.
Yes, this is absolutely biblical, absolutely, and that's why I was able to, because I'm spirit-filled and spirit-driven and guided, and that's why over 50 years ago I was able to say, well, I didn't, and I'm taking no credit for the 14,000 natural remedies that I've created, or for creating this wonderful little generator that's only $79.95, and you can make colloidal silver water for the rest of your life. Just put some new batteries in it, put some new rods on it when they wear out, and just keep right on going. They don't wear out. So, yes. So I was starting to say that there's one other thing, and that one other thing is the cold flu virus herbal formula, which was the old anti-plague Dr. Christopher formula, which now my daughter, Crystal, she is the one that makes that one personally in the laboratory because it's all handmade, and this herbal formula knocks out colds, flus, viruses, and I know that it works because I had to use it 8 days ago. 8 days ago, I got up in the morning. I was dizzy. I knew I was swimming with that same virus that everybody around me and all the kids were coming down with, and so forth. Well, I know that it finally got to me, and I'm kind of reeling with dizziness and weakness, and my voice is weak. So I took some of this cold flu virus, and I don't mess around. I take this stuff by the tablespoon every hour, every 30 minutes until I feel that it's working. And I drank a glassful of colloidal silver water for 3 glasses in one day, and then I went to bed and I slept from 6 o'clock at night after I worked all day because I got up in the morning feeling terrible, and then I worked all day till 6 o'clock in the evening helping people. And by that time I was kind of wearing out and stuff, and I went to bed and I slept from 6 o'clock at night till 12 noon the next day, got up and drank some more colloidal silver water, and that was the end of my cold flu virus episode, gone within 24 hours. And that's because of the cold flu virus formula number 1126. And it works. And I'm taking the colloidal silver water, and I'm taking the cold flu virus, and I'm taking the acidophilus formula number 2030. I'm taking that every day anyway, just to keep my bacteria levels high, so it's more difficult for bacteria, funguses, viruses to attack me. It improves the immune system. So that's what that is now. Now that I've told you about those three things, the generator, number 4576, make all of your own. It's ready to go out of the box. Comes with everything. The cold flu virus, number 1126, and the acidophilus powder that you should take every day of your life. Keep your immune system high. Keep your friendly bacteria high. Makes it harder for things to attack you. Okay, so that's number 2030. When you go to the website, betterhealthherbs.com. betterhealthherbs.com. Type in those numbers. Bingo, it comes up. Then you can see what it is. Here's what got me. What got me was that here, April 5th, I got this information all about this carbapenem-resistant Enterobacteriaceae, CRE. I got that. A few days later, I get this, and it says, and that's by Garth Kant, another killer disease striking homosexuals. And health officials work to diffuse fears of a national epidemic. Look out. Here's the tip of the iceberg. Gay sex has become even more dangerous. Health officials are warning sexually active gay men about an outbreak of potentially dead bacterial meningitis in Los Angeles and New York. And this one's different. Wait till you hear what it does to you. The disease has infected 22 people in New York and caused 7 deaths since 2010. And health officials in Los Angeles are testing to see if the strain infecting gay men there is the same one hitting New York. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation began suffering, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation began offering free meningitis vaccines after a gay man from West Hollywood was declared brain dead Friday, April 5th. And a 33-year-old lawyer, Brett Shad, died within a week of feeling sick. 1 week and he's dead. And the authorities suspected he was exposed to a bacterial meningitis at a party in Palm Springs the weekend of March 30th. That attracts gay revelers from across the country. And the New York Daily News is calling the disease an STD threat, even though the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention does not classify bacterial meningitis as a sexually transmitted disease. The CDC does say that the disease can not be spread by casual contact. Some bacteria can spread through the exchange of respiratory and throat secretions. Kissing, for one, which means that can cross any, whether you're homosexual or not, you're kissing people, you can get this disease that kills people within 1 week. And the news in L.A., the KTLA reported the death of Shad, a West Hollywood lawyer, has caused alarm. The reason why is we're not saying at this point we have an outbreak in Los Angeles. Michael Weinstein, president of the president of the AHF, told KTLA. But we know that this disease is serious. It's deadly, and that it can spread relatively easily. The AP reported Shad went into an emergency room on Wednesday, and on Thursday he was in a coma. And symptoms of the disease often appear within 3 to 7 days of exposure. They include fever, stiff neck, nausea, headache, vomiting, increased sensitivity to light, and an altered mental state, often confusion. West Hollywood Councilman John Duran said notices are being posted. For a lot of our younger community members, 35 and under, this is the first time they've lost a friend who is young and healthy, Duran said. A lot of us are over 40 and having deja vu, having lived through the AIDS epidemic. Meanwhile, health experts try to minimize alarm over the national epidemic among gay men. This is not a disease transmittable mainly by sexual contact. It's spread by respiratory droplets. The vapor from your sitting next to someone having a conversation, and you're close enough to where you're getting some moisture vapor from their voice, which means you can be sitting and having a prolonged conversation with somebody and spread the disease without having sex. Dr. Parveen Kaur of the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. That's what he says. Now, Kaur said usually about 100 cases, out of 100 cases, there will be 10 to 15 fatalities, while just about as many, another 10 to 15, will have hearing loss, diminished mental capacity, and other problems from this meningitis, bacterial meningitis. All of this happened within 2 days. So the bacteria are really overflowing, and we need to protect ourselves. The generator is number 4576, and the cold flu is number 112576, and the acidophilus is number 2030. And if you have that, you don't need to worry. So that's that part. By the way, can we open this up now? Open up the phone lines, please.
Yes, absolutely. And it's definitely, those particular things. Go ahead, Rawchaa.
Yeah, there's something key that he brought out here. How you doing, Mr. Burks?
I am blessed, Elder Rawchaa, and I know you are blessed as well. Thank you for all that you do. Bless you.
Okay, bless you, brother. I noticed you was talking about this disease that they're now promoting to the world that could be spread